What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of K-Cards Baseball. Thanks for joining me this morning on this wonderful 4th of July morning, wherever you might be. It is in fact the 4th of July, and I am making my Vintage Card Wednesday video. I tried making it last night, but it was an epic fail, to be honest with you. 1:30 in the morning is not a good time to try and be making a video when you're extremely tired. So I tried editing it this morning to make it work, but it was god-awful. So I decided to just go ahead and remake the video. Today we're going to be covering these 1980 Topps cards. 1980 Topps was kind of a unique year because it is the last year the Topps was the exclusive producer of baseball cards in the market. 1981 is when Donruss came in, and 1982 Fleer came in. And then, of course, later on in the 80s, you had Score and Upper Deck come in, and that was the full-fledged junk wax era. So this is really kind of a cool set. I like the set design. The cards that we're going to be covering today are primarily going to be a Hall of Famers, or what I call Hall of Very Good players. The cards are going to be in pretty good condition, but we will discuss that as we go through it. And I will also let you guys know the price that the cards will be selling at on the Vintage Baseball Card site on Facebook. If you haven't gone to the Vintage Baseball Card site, I highly recommend it. Just go to Facebook and type in Vintage Baseball Cards, and a picture of Nolan Ryan will pop up, and you know you will be in the right spot. You can go ahead and sign up for the Vintage Baseball Card site, and you can bid on these cards that I will probably be putting up for auction later on tonight if I get a chance to, probably by tomorrow at the very latest. Before we get into that, I do want to go over my usual vintage card disclaimer. I don't have any of these cards in sleeves, primarily because quite oftentimes sleeves will have some sort of flaws on them as well. You can see this one is dinged up and creased up, and quite oftentimes when you put these cards into sleeves, those dings and creases can be misconstrued as actually being on the card when they are not on the card. So I do take them out of sleeves when I do take photos of the cards in preparation for putting them up for sale, and then after I do take pictures, they go right back into sleeves. With that being said, let's get right into these cards. First up, we got Dusty Baker. This card, as you can see, is off center, left or right. It is probably, I would say, 85-15, both top to bottom and left to right. The back is also off center, probably more of 95-5 on the back. However, there are no creases on the card, and the card doesn't have any dinged up corners. So I'm going to be selling this card for $1 on the Dusty Baker card. Next up, we got the Don Sutton card, a definite Hall of Famer. This card is actually pretty well centered, both left to right and top to bottom. It is going to be off center on the back slightly. I'm going to be selling this card for $2 on the Don Sutton card. Pretty cool card there. Another Hall of Very Good player, Steve Garvey. This is his National League All-Star card from 1980. Not sure why Steve Garvey isn't in the Hall of Fame. He was a tremendous player for both the Dodgers and the Padres, and led the Padres to a World Series appearance in the early 80s, but I'm not sure again why he's not in the Hall of Fame. I thought he was a terrific player for many, many years. As you can see here, his batting average was about 304. So I don't know on Steve Garvey why he's not in the Hall of Fame, but neither here nor there. The centering of this card is actually pretty good left to right. There are some slight dings on the right edge. Top to bottom is actually in pretty decent shape. The corners are in good shape. There aren't any creases on the card at all. So I will be selling this card for $1. Next up is Tommy John, another non-Hall of Famer, but definitely a Hall of Very, Very Good. He probably is most well known for Tommy John surgery, which a lot of players and a lot of pitchers still get to this day, and it's probably more popular today than it has ever been, to be honest. But I don't know, another guy, I don't know why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He was a very good pitcher for many, many, many years. This card is pretty decently centered left to right. I'd probably call it 60-40. The same as top to bottom, more of like an 80-20 top to bottom. And you can see the off-centering on the back. But again, the card is in pretty good shape. There aren't any creases or significant flaws on the card. So this card, again, will be selling at $1. Most of the non-Hall of Famers are going to sell at $1 because the cards are in good shape, but that is why I'm selling them individually mostly. Next up is Jim Kitty Cott, a long-time player. I don't know how many gold gloves he won. It was like 17 or something like that. It's just a crazy amount because he was such a tremendous fielding pitcher. He spent a lot of years with the Twins, and probably his most famous years are with the Twins, but he did play for several teams as well. He did play for the Yankees, he did play for the White Sox, he did play for the Cardinals, many, many different teams, and he had a very long career. The centering on this card, left to right, is 60-40 as well as top to bottom. So I'm going to be asking $2 on the Jim Cott card. I think we got a couple of Gary Carters, and both are going to be primarily in the same condition. Definitely a Hall of Famer. The centering on both of these cards, left to right, I would say is 60-40, and top to bottom is probably about the same. The back is in the same type of condition. You can see the centering on both of these cards is a little bit off on the left or right, but I will be asking $1.50 for each one of these cards. Next up, we got the Hawk, Andre Dawson. This card, again, is pretty well centered left to right. I would put it at 60-40, both top to bottom and left to right. Again, the back of the card left to right is slightly off. Pretty common in this 1980 set. Most of them are going to be off center on the back. But again, this card is in pretty decent shape as far as the surface goes. There aren't any creases or significant scratches on the card, and the corners are in decent shape. So I'll be asking $2 on the Andre Dawson card. Next up is Raleigh Fingers, a longtime player, primarily with the A's. He did win, I think, 3 World Series with the A's in the early 70s. The centering of this card is pretty decent, left to right. Top to bottom is pretty good too. I would probably say 60-40 on both. The back is a little bit better centered than a lot of the other ones. So I will be asking, let's say, $1.50 on the Raleigh Fingers card. Next up, we got Bert Blyleven, again, a longtime Twin. He did pitch for the Twins at a couple different times. He did come in with the Twins in the early 70s. 71 is actually his rookie card. He did go to the Rangers, was with the Pirates. I think he was with the Angels for quite a few years, but he primarily is known as a Twin. Left to right on this card, I would probably say is 60-40. Top to bottom is the same. The centering on the back is more like 80-20. I will be asking $2 on the Bert Blyleven card. Next up is Dave Parker, and we have a couple of Dave Parker cards. They are going to be a little bit different. This one, you can see the centering is a little bit off left to right, whereas the centering is off right to left on this card. But Dave Parker was a tremendous player many years for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I will be asking $1 for each one of these cards. Next up, I've got a couple, I think just one Dave Winfield, maybe another one later. Anyways, but this Dave Winfield card is in pretty decent shape. There aren't any significant scratches on the card. I do see a little bit of gum stain there. I can probably take that out with the dryer sheet. The corner of the upper left is a little bit dinged. Centering, I would probably call it 70-30, maybe 80-20 left to right. Top to bottom is primarily going to be 80-20, and the back is going to be off-centered left to right. Same as all the other cards. I'm asking $2 on the Dave Winfield card. Next up is the Super Veteran Don Sutton card. These Super Veterans don't really sell that great. I'll probably toss this one out at $1, even though the centering is a little bit off here, 80-20. Top to bottom, left to right is actually pretty good, but you can see the top to bottom on the back of the card is going to be off 90-10. So $1 for the card is a pretty decent price. Next up, we have Gaylord Perry, brother of Jim Perry, as I always say. The centering of this card is 70-30 left to right and top to bottom as well. And the back is going to be slightly off-center. Gaylord Perry was a long-time knuckleball pitcher. He played for many, many different teams and had a very long career as a knuckleball pitcher. But I'm going to be asking $2 on this card. It doesn't have any sort of flaws on the surface of the card, and the corners are in decent shape. So that is the Gaylord Perry card. Next up, we got Carl Yastrzemski. This card, the centering is going to be 60-40, both left to right. Top to bottom, I'd probably put more at 80-20. Again, there isn't going to be any significant flaws on the front of the card. The corners are in decent shape. The centering is off on the back. So it's kind of getting a little bit repetitive because it's the same for most of these cards. Most of these cards are going to be in good shape as far as the surface and the corners, but the center is going to be slightly off on most of them. Next up, we got Pete Rose, and this is a pretty decent Pete Rose card. Not a Hall of Famer, but probably will be after he passes away, since he had a lifetime ban from the Hall of Fame. I would say after he passes away, he probably will get elected, because he still is the hits leader, and no one, I don't think, will ever have the amount of hits that he had. Would he have like 4,200 some odd? 4,250 in that area. So that is the Pete Rose card. The centering is pretty good left to right, probably 50-50, both left to right and top to bottom. There aren't any significant flaws on the surface of the card. The corners are slightly dinged up, but not too bad. So that is the Pete Rose card. I'm going to be asking $3 for this card. Next up, we got Rodney Carew, a definite longtime Twin. Was my major hero when I first moved to the United States. He was the first player that I really identified with him in Carmen Killebrew. But a great player. It was terrible when he got traded to the California Angels, but I still liked him even when he was with the Angels. Anyways, this card, the centering is pretty good left to right, as well as top to bottom is probably 80-20 top to bottom. The centering on the back is pretty decent. There aren't any significant flaws on the front of the card, and the corners are in good shape. There is a slight ding in the upper left-hand corner, but I will be asking $2 on the Rodney Carew card. Next up, we got Willie McCovey. Pretty good card here. The centering is probably 55-45, top to bottom and left to right. The centering is actually pretty decent on the back. There aren't any significant flaws on the surface of the card. The corners are in decent shape, so I'll be asking $3 on the Willie McCovey card. We have another Pete Rose here, and it's going to be pretty similar to the last one, although this one does have a print mark or a marker mark in the bottom of the card. Left to right on this card, I would probably call it, let's say, 70-30. Top to bottom and left to right, actually top to bottom actually isn't too bad. I'd probably say that's more in the 60-40 range. The back of the card is going to be off center left to right, 90-10, but I'm going to be asking $2 for this card. Fergie Jenkins is next up, and Fergie Jenkins, this card is in really nice shape. Left to right, top to bottom is pretty well centered. I would call it, let's say, 50-50. What the heck? The back of the card is in good shape. Again, we do have a centering issue on the back of the card, but it is a really nice Fergie Jenkins card, and I'll be asking $3 for that card. Next up, we have Reggie Jackson. You guys all know the story on Reggie Jackson, so I'm not going to go into great detail about it. This one is when he was still with the Yankees before he went on to the Angels. The card left to right, I would probably say 70-30. Both top to bottom and left to right. Again, there isn't any significant flaws on the front of the card. The corners are in decent shape, and the back of the card is slightly off top to bottom, but I will still be asking at minimum $5 for the Reggie Jackson card. The last card we have up is another Dave Winfield card. Again, this card is very similar to the other Dave Winfield card. The centering is pretty decent left to right and top to bottom. I'd probably call it 60-40, both left to right and top to bottom. The centering is pretty decent on the back, slightly off left to right, but I will be asking $3 on this Dave Winfield card. So that is what we got for you guys today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this preview. We do have a couple of really cool things coming up on the channel. I do have a subscriber request video I'll be making tomorrow night, which is going to review, again, the top prospects in baseball and talk about each one of them and trying to pick out the hidden treasures in the prospects market. And then Monday, we will have another Breaker Monday where we're going to open up this mega box of Series 2, probably the last Series 2 we'll see. It seems to be dying off on the shelves. We don't see much of it on the shelves right now. So they definitely short print Series 2. I think that's a lot of the reason why the boxes are as loaded as they are. Series 2 has been a great set because the hits just keep coming in Series 2 for sure. So that is, again, all I got for you guys today. Have a great 4th of July holiday and a great 4th of July weekend. Hopefully the weather is really good and you guys enjoy time with family and friends. Get some good food in and possibly some good fireworks and back to work on Monday. That is all I got for you guys. Thanks, guys. Hit that like and subscribe, and we will talk to you guys later.